Exactly 1 year after that life-changing conversation in the diner, David sat in his apartment on a Saturday morning reviewing applications for the crew support fund. His apartment looked completely different now. Photos on the walls, plants on the windowsill, a bookshelf full of books about business and nonprofit work, a coffee table he'd built himself. This wasn't just a place to sleep anymore. It was home. His mother was doing well, living with his sister in Arizona and getting stronger every month. The medical bills were manageable now, being paid down steadily instead of drowning him. His driving business had grown to the point where he'd hired 2 other drivers to help with overflow work. Life was stable in a way he'd almost forgotten was possible. But more than the material changes, David had found something he never expected: purpose, meaning, a reason to wake up that went beyond just surviving to the next day. The applications in front of him represented real people going through real struggles. A young camera operator whose appendix had burst and who now had $15,000 in emergency medical bills. A veteran grip losing his apartment because his rent had doubled. A costume designer whose car had been totaled by an uninsured driver. Each story was different, but they all shared the same desperate undertone that David recognized immediately. He'd been writing those same mental pleas into the universe just a year ago. His phone buzzed with a message from Tyler, the young man David had met in that gas station parking lot. It was a photo of Tyler standing in front of his apartment building, holding up his keys with a huge smile. The message read, "1 year in this place. Just signed another lease. Got promoted to assistant director on my current project. Life is good. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible." David smiled and saved the photo. Tyler had been one of the first people the fund had helped after David got involved, and watching his transformation had been incredible. Tyler hadn't just stabilized, he'd thrived. And last month, Tyler had told David he'd helped another struggling production assistant find resources and support. The ripples kept spreading. A knock on David's door interrupted his thoughts. When he opened it, a delivery person handed him a package. Inside was a simple card and a photograph David had never seen before. The photo showed him on his move-in day, standing in front of his apartment door with an expression of pure disbelief and hope. He hadn't known anyone was taking pictures that day. The card was in Keanu's handwriting. David recognized it from various notes and messages over the past year. It read, "For the days when it feels impossible, remember this moment. You rebuilt your life not because someone gave you a handout, but because you had the strength to accept help and the courage to extend it to others. Thank you for letting me be part of your journey. Keep changing the world, one person at a time." Attached was a letter of recommendation. David unfolded it carefully and started reading. Keanu had written a detailed reference describing David's professionalism, his integrity, his leadership skills, and his commitment to helping others. It was the kind of letter that could open doors, create opportunities, launch a real career. A handwritten note at the bottom said, "In case you ever want to do something different. Though I hope you'll still drive me sometimes. I'd miss our conversations." David sat down, holding the card and letter carefully. He thought about everything that had happened in the past year. The absolute lowest point of his life had somehow led to the most meaningful period. The time when he felt most invisible had taught him to see others who were invisible. The struggle that nearly broke him had given him the strength to help others who were breaking. That evening, David picked up Keanu for a movie premiere. As always, Keanu slid into the back seat with a casual greeting, like they were just 2 regular guys going somewhere together instead of a movie star and his driver heading to a red carpet event. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of silence that exists between people who know each other well enough that talking isn't always necessary. Finally, David spoke. "I got your package today." "Yeah?" Keanu said. "What did you think?" "I think you've done enough for me," David said, his voice thick with emotion. "More than enough. That letter, the recommendation, it's incredible, but you don't have to keep—" "I wanted to," Keanu interrupted gently. "You've done amazing work this year, David. The number of people you've helped, the network you've built, the way you've turned your experience into service for others. That deserves recognition. I learned all of that from watching you," David said. "The way you treat people, the way you notice who others don't see, the way you help without making it about yourself. You showed me what kindness actually looks like." "You already had that in you," Keanu replied. "I just removed some obstacles so you could express it." They pulled up to a red light and David caught Keanu's eye in the rearview mirror. I never properly thanked you. For everything. For seeing me. For caring. For changing my entire life. Keanu leaned forward slightly. You thank me every day, David. Every person you help, every life you touch, every time you extend dignity and compassion to someone who's struggling. That's the thanks. You took what happened to you and multiplied it. You didn't just accept help, you became someone who helps. That's everything. David felt tears prick his eyes but blinked them away. So what now? Where do we go from here? We keep going, Keanu said simply. We keep helping people. We keep building this network. We keep creating ripples that spread further than we can see. The fund is working. Your mentorship is working. People are being helped and then helping others. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. They arrived at the theater and the chaos of a premiere surrounded them immediately. Crowds of fans, flashing cameras, reporters shouting questions. Keanu stepped out of the car into the madness, transforming from the regular guy David knew into the public figure everyone else saw. But before he closed the door, Keanu turned back. Same time tomorrow? I'll be there, David replied, meaning so much more than just the next day's drive. As David pulled away from the premiere, he thought about everything. About sleeping in this very car a year ago, terrified and exhausted and invisible. About that conversation in the diner that changed everything. About the apartment, the fund, the purpose he'd found. About Tyler and Antonio and Christine and all the others whose lives had been touched by this chain of kindness. His phone buzzed again. It was a message from Tyler. Hey man, remember that production assistant I mentioned? Just helped her get into an apartment. She was living in her car. Gave her all the resources you gave me. Felt good to pay it forward. This is what you meant, right? David pulled over and typed a response. That's exactly what I meant. You're changing lives now, Tyler. Keep it going. He sat there for a moment, in a car that used to be his whole world when he had nothing else, and felt overwhelming gratitude. Not just for what had been given to him, but for what he'd been able to give to others. For the transformation from invisible to visible, from helpless to helpful, from surviving to thriving. The next morning, David was up early as always. He made coffee in his own kitchen, took a shower in his own bathroom, got dressed in his own bedroom. Simple things that weren't simple at all when you'd lived without them. He'd never take any of it for granted. Before heading out, he checked his email and found 3 new applications to the fund. A lighting technician facing eviction, a sound mixer with a broken-down car, a production assistant dealing with medical bills. 3 more people at their breaking point, reaching out in desperation, hoping someone would see them. David read each application carefully, making notes, already thinking about how to help. These weren't just forms to him. They were real people with real struggles, and he understood their fear and exhaustion in his bones. He picked up Keanu right on time, as always. As they merged into morning traffic, David mentioned the new applications. 3 more people we can help, Keanu said. That's a good morning. It's more than that, David replied. It's 3 more people who'll probably help others once they're stable. If we can help these 3 and they each help even one person, and those people help someone else, we're talking about dozens of lives changed from just today's work. Exponential kindness, Keanu said thoughtfully. I like that. They drove past a parking lot where David used to sleep, past the gym where he used to shower, past the diner where everything changed. David looked at these landmarks of his former struggle and felt not shame but strength. He'd survived all of that. He'd come out the other side stronger, more empathetic, more purposeful. You know what's crazy? David said. A year ago I thought my life was over. I couldn't see any way forward. I was just trying to make it through each day. And now I'm helping other people get through their hardest days. It's like the worst thing that ever happened to me prepared me for the best thing I've ever done. That's usually how it works, Keanu replied. Your struggles weren't wasted. They were preparation. As they approached the studio, David saw something that made him slow down. A car parked in the back corner of the lot, windows slightly fogged. A person sitting in the driver's seat who'd clearly spent the night there. The same spot where David used to park. You see that? Keanu asked. Within 2 weeks, Tyler was moving into a small studio apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was his. 4 walls, a roof, a door he could lock, a bed that wasn't a backseat. David helped him move his stuff, which didn't take long since everything Tyler owned fit in his car. As Tyler stood in his new apartment, looking around with tears streaming down his face, He said the same thing David had said months earlier. "I don't know how to thank you." "Thank me by staying strong," David replied. "And someday when you see someone else struggling, you help them. That's how you thank me." David found himself drawn deeper into this work. He started showing up at driver meetups not just for jobs, but to mentor others. He'd stand in parking lots and break rooms sharing his story, letting people know that rock bottom wasn't permanent and that help existed. He met Antonio, a grip whose transmission had blown and who couldn't afford the $1,000 repair. Without his car, he couldn't get to sets. Without work, he couldn't fix his car. David helped him access the fund, got him back on the road back to work. He met Christine, a script supervisor facing eviction after her hours got cut. She had 3 kids and was about to end up on the street. The fund covered 2 months of rent while she found steadier work. He met Robert, an older stuntman dealing with medical bills from an injury that happened on a set without proper insurance. The fund helped him manage the debt while he fought the production company legally. Each person David helped seemed to bloom once they weren't spending every ounce of energy just surviving. Antonio started getting promoted on crews, impressing people with his work ethic now that he wasn't exhausted all the time. Christine found a better-paying job and was putting money away for her kids' future. Robert won his case and was back doing the work he loved, and they all started helping others in their own ways. Antonio created a shared document listing mechanics who'd work with people on payment plans. Christine organized a clothing swap for crew members' kids. Robert started mentoring young stunt workers about their rights and safety. David watched the ripples spread, watched kindness multiply in ways that seemed almost miraculous. He'd meet someone new and they'd say, "Oh, Antonio told me to talk to you." Or Christine said you might be able to help. The network was growing organically, built on trust and shared experience. One evening, about 8 months after Keanu had first helped him, David was driving Keanu home from a late shoot. "I helped 12 people this month," David said. 12 people who were going through what I went through. And you know what's crazy? 5 of them have already started helping other people. This thing is growing. Keanu smiled. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. You can't change the whole world by yourself, but you can change someone's world. And if they change someone else's world, and those people change more worlds, suddenly you've created something that reaches further than you ever could alone. "I never thought I'd be doing this kind of work," David admitted. 6 months ago I was sleeping in my car. Now I'm helping other people not have to go through that. It's weird how life works. "It's not weird," Keanu said. "You understand what they're going through because you lived it. That makes you the perfect person to help. Your struggle wasn't wasted. It gave you empathy and insight that you can use to serve others." David thought about that. His worst period, the time when he felt most hopeless and invisible, had become the foundation for the most meaningful work he'd ever done. The pain hadn't been pointless. It had prepared him for this. "Thank you," David said quietly, "for everything. For seeing me when I was invisible. For helping me when you didn't have to. For trusting me with this work. You changed everything." "We changed it together," Keanu corrected. "And we're going to keep changing it, one person at a time." As they drove through the city, David thought about Tyler sleeping in a real bed tonight instead of a car. About Antonio working tomorrow without worrying about his broken-down vehicle. About Christine's kids having a stable home. About Robert healing and fighting and winning. He thought about all the people he hadn't met yet. The ones still sleeping in cars and counting change and pretending everything was fine. The ones who felt invisible and hopeless and alone. They weren't alone. David would find them. And when he did, he'd see them the way Keanu had seen him. He'd help them the way he'd been helped. And those people would help others, creating an endless chain of compassion that would spread through Los Angeles and beyond. That was the real gift Keanu had given him. Not just a home, but a purpose. Not just survival, but a reason to thrive. Not just help, but the opportunity to become someone who helps others. And David was determined to live up to that gift every single day. 3 months after moving into his apartment, David found himself in a conversation that would reveal just how deep Keanu's kindness ran. He was waiting in the usual spot outside a production office when another driver pulled up next to him. The guy introduced himself as Carlos and they started talking shop the way drivers do, trading stories about traffic and clients and the best taco trucks in the city. Eventually, Carlos asked who David drove for, and when David mentioned Keanu, Carlos's whole face lit up. No kidding? Man, let me tell you something about that guy. David settled in to listen. Carlos explained that 2 years ago, he'd been working as a stunt coordinator on one of Keanu's films. His daughter had needed surgery for a heart condition, something serious that insurance only partially covered. Carlos had been looking at tens of thousands of dollars in medical bills, maybe losing his house, the whole nightmare scenario. I mentioned it once, Carlos said, just once in passing, because someone asked why I looked stressed. Keanu overheard. Didn't say anything at the time, but a week later, the hospital called and said an anonymous donation had covered everything we needed. Everything. When I asked who did it, they wouldn't tell me, but I knew. I just knew. David felt a chill run down his spine. He never told you it was him? Never. And when I tried to thank him, tried to talk about it, he just changed the subject. Said he was glad things worked out and asked about my daughter. That was it. Over the following weeks, David heard more stories. They came from all over, whispered in break rooms and parking lots, shared by crew members and service workers who'd all experienced similar moments of unexpected grace. There was Kelly, a production assistant who'd been wearing the same worn-out work boots for months because she couldn't afford new ones. She showed up one day to find a pair in her size, supposedly an extra that wardrobe had ordered by mistake. But they were exactly my size, she told David, and exactly the kind I needed for the type of work I do. That's not a mistake. A security guard named Frank mentioned how Keanu had noticed he was reading a book about woodworking during breaks. A week later, a full set of quality woodworking tools showed up at the security office addressed to Frank, with a note that said, "For your projects." No signature, but Frank knew. What struck David about all these stories wasn't just the generosity, it was the pattern. Keanu paid attention to people others overlooked. He remembered names, asked follow-up questions about people's families and lives, noticed when something was off. And when he discovered someone struggling, he helped in ways that preserved their dignity and privacy. David saw this firsthand during their daily drives. At every location, Keanu would spend time talking with crew members, not in a networking way, but with genuine interest. He'd ask the lighting guys about their weekends, remember that someone's kid was trying out for the soccer team, inquire about an elderly parent's health. The janitor who cleaned the studio lot, an older man named Bill, once mentioned to David that Keanu was the only actor who consistently said good morning to him. Most of them look right through me, Bill said, like I'm invisible. But that guy, he asks about my wife, remember she's been sick. Even brought her flowers once. Can you believe that? Flowers for my wife, just because he'd heard she wasn't feeling well. One day David was waiting in the car while Keanu filmed a scene. Patricia from the apartment building happened to call him, and during their conversation she let something slip. You know, she said, you're not the only one he's helped. There's an older gentleman in your building, Unit 1F, Vietnam veteran, was facing eviction because his benefits got messed up. Mr. Reeves paid his rent for 3 months while he sorted things out with the VA. Made me promise never to tell anyone. David felt his throat tighten. He's helping other people the same way he helped me? I probably shouldn't have mentioned it, Patricia said. But yeah, this isn't a one-time thing for him. It's just who he is. After that call, David started paying more attention. He noticed how Keanu interacted with everyone on set, from the director to the person holding the boom mic to the teenager running for coffee. He treated them all the same, with respect and genuine interest. During a particularly long shoot one evening, the craft services table ran low on food. Keanu noticed some of the crew hadn't eaten and quietly arranged for a full catering order from a nearby restaurant. When it arrived, he made sure the crew ate first, didn't take credit for ordering it, and just blended back into the crowd like it was no big deal. David mentioned this to a makeup artist during a break, and she nodded knowingly. That's just Keanu. Last year we were filming in winter and it got really cold. He noticed the crew was freezing and showed up the next day with like 50 high-quality winter jackets. Said the studio had sent them, but the studio had no idea what we were talking about. Those jackets had to cost a fortune, and he never mentioned it again. The stories kept coming, creating a picture of someone who'd made kindness a daily practice rather than an occasional gesture. David realized that what happened to him wasn't special or unique in terms of Keanu's character. The special part was that David now got to see behind the curtain, to understand that this kind of quiet generosity was happening all around all the time. One afternoon, David was grabbing lunch from a food truck near the studio when he overheard two crew members talking. One was complaining about student loans and how she'd probably be paying them off until she was 60. The other one laughed bitterly and agreed. David thought about his own medical debt, how it had nearly destroyed his life, and how Keanu's help with the financial advisor had turned an impossible situation into something manageable. He wanted to tell these women that there was help available, that someone might care enough to assist them, but he didn't know how to bring it up without seeming weird. That evening, he mentioned it to Keanu during their drive back. "I heard some crew members talking about debt today," he said. "Made me think about how lucky I was that you connected me with that financial advisor. I wish more people knew that help exists." Keanu was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the passing city. Then he said, "What if we made that help more available? Not publicly, nothing formal, just a resource that people could access if they needed it." "What do you mean?" David asked. "I've been thinking about this for a while," Keanu said. "There are so many people in this industry, people who work hard and make everything run, but they're one emergency away from disaster. What if there was a fund, something quiet and simple that could help with things like security deposits, medical bills, emergency car repairs, the kind of stuff that destroys people's lives when they can't handle it?" David felt excitement building in his chest. "That would be incredible." "I'd need help running it," Keanu continued. "Someone who understands what it's like to need that help, who knows how to identify genuine need and connect with people in a real way. Someone like you." David almost swerved the car. "Me? You want me to help run this?" "You understand this world better than I ever could," Keanu explained. "I can provide resources, but you provide the wisdom and the connection. We'd do it together." Over the next few weeks, they quietly set up what they called the Crew Support Fund. Nothing official or publicized, just a resource that could help people in genuine crisis. David would help identify people who needed assistance through his network of drivers and crew members, and they'd coordinate support that was respectful and private. The first person they helped was a young woman named Rachel, assistant camera operator who'd crashed her car and couldn't afford the repairs. Without a car, she couldn't get to sets, and without work, she couldn't pay for the repairs. A classic catch-22 that was about to end her career before it really started. David met with her at a coffee shop, explained that a fund existed to help crew members in situations like hers, and that they could cover her repairs. Rachel broke down crying, just like David had in that empty apartment months ago. "Why would anyone do this?" she asked through tears. "You don't even know me." "Because someone helped me when I needed it," David told her. "And now I'm passing it forward. That's how this works." Word of the fund spread slowly through whisper networks and trusted connections. A costume designer whose apartment had flooded, a sound mixer whose mother needed emergency surgery, a prop master facing eviction after his roommate bailed. One by one, people in crisis found help that preserved their dignity and allowed them to keep working, keep living, keep moving forward. David discovered he was good at this work. He knew how to talk to people without making them feel like charity cases. He understood the shame that came with needing help, and how to cut through it with empathy and respect. And he had street credibility. People trusted him because he'd been where they were. Every time they helped someone, David would update Keanu during their drives. Keanu never wanted credit or recognition. He just wanted to know the person was okay and what they planned to do next. He saw each situation as an investment in a human being, not a transaction. One evening, after helping their 10th person through the fund, David said, "You know what's crazy? Most of these people have no idea you're involved. They think it's just some general crew fund." "Good," Keanu replied. "It should stay that way. This isn't about me. It's about people getting help when they need it." "But you're the one making it happen," David insisted. "We're making it happen," Keanu corrected. "And everyone we help, they'll probably help someone else someday. That's the point. It's not about one person being generous. It's about creating a culture where people look out for each other." David thought about the guy he'd met in the parking lot, the one sleeping in his car. He'd helped that kid find resources and eventually a place to stay. And last week, that same kid had told David he'd helped another driver find a job. The ripples were already spreading. As they drove through Los Angeles that evening, past millions of people all fighting their own invisible battles, David realized something profound. Keanu hadn't just changed his life. He'd shown him that one person paying attention, one person caring enough to act, could create waves of change that spread further than anyone could predict. The stories would continue. More people would be helped. More kindness would ripple outward. And somewhere in the city, someone would notice someone else struggling and decide to do something about it, continuing a chain of compassion that had started with a simple observation and a cup of coffee in a diner. That was the real magic, David thought. Not the money or the apartments or the help itself, but the way it inspired others to care, to notice, to act. Keanu had started something that would outlive any single gesture, something that would keep growing as long as people kept passing it forward, and David was honored to be part of it. David barely slept that night. He kept replaying the conversation at the diner in his mind, wondering what Keanu meant by fixing things. Part of him worried it was just kind words, the type people say when they feel bad but don't actually follow through. Another part of him, the part that had gotten to know Keanu over 3 months of daily drives, knew better. When Keanu said something, he meant it. The next morning, David was in his usual spot in the parking lot at 6:30, a full half hour before pickup time. He'd brushed his teeth in the gym, put on his cleanest shirt, and tried to look as professional as possible. Whatever was coming, he wanted to be ready. At 7 sharp, Keanu appeared, but instead of just getting in the car, he walked up to the driver's window with 2 coffees in hand. He passed one through to David with that familiar, easy smile. "Morning," Keanu said. "Change of plans today. Before we head to the studio, I need you to take us somewhere else first." He handed David a slip of paper with an address written on it. Silver Lake. Should take about 20 minutes with morning traffic. David plugged the address into his phone and started driving. Keanu didn't explain where they were going, and David didn't ask. They rode in comfortable silence, sipping their coffees as Los Angeles woke up around them. The address led them to a small apartment complex, tucked into a quiet street. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and well-maintained, with little balconies and potted plants out front. The kind of place normal people actually lived, not the luxury high-rises you saw in movies. "Come on," Keanu said, getting out of the car. "We've got an appointment." David followed him inside, confused but curious. They walked into the building manager's office, where a middle-aged woman with kind eyes greeted them. "Mr. Reeves, good to see you again. And you must be David. Again?" David thought. When had Keanu been here before? "David, this is Patricia. She manages this building. Patricia, this is David, the guy I was telling you about." Patricia smiled warmly and pulled out a folder. "I've got everything ready. Unit 2B, just like we discussed. 1 bedroom, full kitchen, bathroom with a tub, and it's got a great little balcony facing east so you get nice morning light." David looked between them, his brain struggling to catch up. "I'm sorry, what's happening right now?" Keanu gestured to a chair. "Sit down for a second." David sat, and Keanu pulled up a chair next to him. "Here's the deal. This apartment is yours if you want it. First 3 months of rent are paid. Security deposit is covered. You can move in today, right now. Patricia's got the keys ready to go." The words hit David like a physical force. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Finally, he managed, "I can't accept this. This is too much. Way too much." "It's already done," Keanu said simply. "The money's paid. The apartment's sitting empty. Only question is whether you're going to use it or let it go to waste." "But I'll pay you back," David insisted, his voice cracking. "Every penny. I promise. I'll work extra jobs. I'll figure out a payment plan. Keanu held up a hand. "Stop, you're not paying me back. That's not how this works." "I have to," David said desperately. "I can't just take this from you. It's not right." "David, listen to me." Keanu's voice was gentle but firm. "You've been sleeping in your car for 6 months while working 3 jobs and showing up every single day with a smile on your face. You're one of the most reliable, professional people I work with. This isn't charity. This is me investing in someone who deserves a fair shot at life." Patricia slid a set of keys across the desk. "Why don't you at least go look at it?" she suggested kindly. "Unit 2B, 2nd floor, 3rd door on the left." David picked up the keys with shaking hands. He walked out of the office in a daze, climbed the stairs, and found the door. The key turned smoothly in the lock. The apartment was small but perfect. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The walls were freshly painted. The kitchen had a full-size refrigerator and a stove that looked like it actually worked. There was a bedroom with a closet, A bathroom with a real shower, a living room just big enough for a couch and maybe a TV. It was simple and modest and absolutely beautiful. David walked to the balcony and looked out at the street below. Normal people were starting their normal days. Walking dogs, heading to work, carrying groceries. Regular life. The kind of life he'd been locked out of for half a year. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to find Keanu standing in the doorway. "So?" Keanu asked. "What do you think?" "I think I'm going to cry," David admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "That's allowed," Keanu said with a slight smile. David wiped his eyes roughly with the back of his hand. "Why are you doing this? You barely know me." Keanu walked further into the apartment, looking around. "I know you show up every day on time. I know you're respectful and hardworking. I know you sacrificed everything to take care of your mother. I know you're trying to rebuild your life while the world makes it almost impossible. That's enough for me to know. But people will think," David started. "I don't care what people think," Keanu interrupted. "And you shouldn't either. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to take today off with full pay. You're going to get your stuff from your car and move it in here. You're going to take a real shower, sleep in a real bed, and start living like a human being again. Tomorrow we go back to normal. You drive, I pay you, we both do our jobs. The only difference is you'll actually be rested for once." David nodded, unable to form words. The weight of 6 months of stress and fear and exhaustion suddenly hit him all at once. He sat down on the floor right there in the empty living room and put his head in his hands. Keanu sat down next to him. They stayed like that for a few minutes, just two guys sitting on the floor of an empty apartment while the world continued outside. "I was starting to think nobody cared," David finally said. "Like I could just disappear and nobody would even notice." "I noticed," Keanu said quietly. "And I care." After a while they stood up. Patricia gave David all the paperwork, explained how the utilities worked, and handed over a welcome packet with information about the neighborhood. Keanu made sure David had his phone number, not just for work but for anything he needed. "I'm serious about taking today off," Keanu said. "Get settled. I'll catch a ride to the studio. We'll pick up tomorrow like normal." But Keanu wasn't done. Over the next few days, David started to realize the apartment was just the beginning. A package arrived with basic furniture, a bed, a couch, a small dining table, and chairs. The card said it was from the studio as a thank you for his work. But David suspected where it really came from. Then Keanu mentioned, almost casually, that he'd connected with a financial advisor who helped people dealing with medical debt. "Friend of mine," Keanu said. "He's really good at restructuring payment plans, finding options people don't know about. Might be worth a conversation. No pressure, but I can make an introduction if you want." David met with the advisor, a sharp woman named Lisa who reviewed his mother's medical bills and found several errors, some programs he qualified for, and restructured his payment plan in a way that cut his monthly burden nearly in half. When David asked about her fee, she smiled and said it was already handled. There was more. Keanu quietly connected David with a property management company that hired drivers for their celebrity clients. Steady work, good pay, full benefits, and a schedule that didn't require him to work until 3 in the morning just to survive. The manager there mentioned that Keanu had called personally to recommend him. Through all of it, Keanu never made a big deal about any of it. He never acted like David owed him anything. He never brought it up or made David feel small or indebted. They just continued their daily drives talking about movies and traffic and whatever else came up, like two regular people going about their day. About 2 weeks after moving into the apartment, David picked Keanu up for an early morning call. "Hey," David said as Keanu settled into the back seat. "I just want to say thank you for everything. You changed my life, man. Like, actually changed it." Keanu looked up from his phone. "You changed your own life, David. You're the one who kept showing up every day. You're the one who took care of your mom. You're the one who worked 3 jobs and never gave up. All I did was remove some obstacles." "Those were pretty big obstacles," David said with a laugh. "Maybe. But you would have gotten past them eventually. I just sped up the process." David merged onto the highway, heading toward the studio. "I've been thinking about what you said about how this is an investment. I want to make sure it's a good investment. I want to do something meaningful with this second chance." "You will," Keanu said confidently. "I've got no doubt about that," and he was right. David started sleeping through the night for the first time in months. He wasn't constantly exhausted anymore. His work improved even more, and he started getting referrals from other clients. He could afford groceries instead of living on granola bars and free craft services. He called his mom every week without worrying about phone bills. He was, slowly but surely, rebuilding a life. But more than the practical changes, something else shifted inside David. He started noticing other people the way Keanu had noticed him. The parking attendant who looked tired, the production assistant wearing shoes that were falling apart, the catering worker carefully packing leftovers. David saw them now, really saw them, and he understood that they were all fighting invisible battles. One morning, about a month after moving in, David was early to the studio and saw a young guy sleeping in his car in the parking lot, the same lot where David had slept for months. Their eyes met through the windows, and David saw his own recent past staring back at him. He got out of his car and knocked gently on the guy's window. When the young man rolled it down, looking defensive and scared, David said simply, "Hey man, I've been there. Like literally been exactly where you are. You want some coffee? Maybe I can help." They sat on a curb in the early morning light, drinking coffee from the craft services truck, and David shared what he knew. The best places to park, the gyms that didn't ask questions, the resources available that most people didn't know about. More importantly, he shared hope. It doesn't have to be permanent, David told him. There are people who care even when it doesn't feel like it. You just gotta hang on. When Keanu arrived that morning and saw David talking with someone, he didn't interrupt. He just smiled to himself and waited. Later during their drive, David told him about the encounter. "Good," Keanu said. "That's exactly right. What is?" David asked, passing it forward. "Helping the next person. That's how things actually change. Not just one act of kindness, but a chain of them." David nodded, understanding blooming in his chest. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about something bigger, something that could ripple outward in ways he couldn't predict. Keanu hadn't just given him a home. He'd shown him a different way of being in the world, and David was determined to live up to that investment. The black SUV pulled up to the studio gates at exactly 7 in the morning, just like it had every day for the past 3 months. Behind the wheel sat a man in his early 30s, wearing a clean-pressed shirt and the kind of tired smile that comes from not quite enough sleep. His name was David, and for the last 90 days he'd had the job most drivers in Los Angeles would kill for. He was Keanu Reeves' personal driver. David took pride in his work. He was never late, not even by a minute. He kept the car spotless, knew all the best routes to avoid traffic, and understood that his job was to be there when needed and invisible when not. It was good work, steady work, and he couldn't afford to lose it. When Keanu slid into the back seat that morning, he offered his usual quiet greeting. He wasn't like some of the celebrities David had driven before. No demands, no attitude, no treating him like he was part of the furniture. Keanu always said good morning, always said thank you, and sometimes they'd chat about movies or the weather or nothing in particular. He was, in every sense, just a regular guy who happened to be famous. But this particular morning, something caught Keanu's attention. In the front passenger seat was a worn gym bag, stuffed full and slightly unzipped. A toothbrush was sticking out of the side pocket, along with what looked like a stick of deodorant. Next to it sat a pillow with no pillowcase, the kind you'd grab in a hurry. Keanu didn't say anything. He just noticed. Later that morning, they stopped at Keanu's favorite coffee shop. He always insisted on going in himself, never sent David to fetch things like some kind of servant. As Keanu headed inside, he glanced back and saw David carefully counting coins from his cup holder, checking if he had enough for a breakfast sandwich. The man counted twice, then 3 times, making sure of every quarter and dime. When Keanu came back out with his coffee, he had a second cup and a bag of food. "Figured you might want some breakfast," he said, handing them through the window. "My treat." David looked surprised but grateful. "You didn't have to do that, man. But thank you, really." Over the next few days, Keanu started noticing more things. Small things that individually meant nothing, but together painted a picture. David was always the first one in the parking lot every morning. Not just early, but already there, sometimes a full hour before their scheduled pickup time. His clothes were always clean and ironed, but Keanu realized it was the same 3 shirts rotating throughout the week. Same pants, same shoes, all kept immaculate but clearly stretched thin. There were other signs, too. David never talked about going home. Other drivers would mention their apartments, their roommates, their long commutes. David never did. When Keanu asked casual questions about his evening or his neighborhood, David's answers were always vague, always steering the conversation elsewhere. Then there was the way David's face lit up whenever craft services had extra food at the end of a shoot. Other crew members would grab a snack out of convenience, but David looked at that free food like it mattered. He'd carefully pack away sandwiches and fruit, thanking the catering staff multiple times. One evening, after a particularly brutal 14-hour day on set, Keanu made a decision. "Hey, David," he said as they pulled away from the studio. "You mind stopping at that diner on Sunset? I'm starving." "Sure thing," David replied, heading that direction. When they arrived, Keanu didn't get out right away. Instead, he leaned forward. "Join me." "Come on, I hate eating alone." David hesitated. This wasn't how things worked. He was the driver, not the dinner companion. But something in Keanu's expression made it clear this wasn't really a request. It was something more important. They slid into a booth and a waitress brought menus and coffee. Keanu ordered a burger. David ordered just coffee, claiming he wasn't hungry, even though Keanu had seen him eat nothing but a granola bar all day. "Get some food," Keanu said gently. "Please, it's been a long day." David finally ordered a sandwich and they sat in silence for a moment. Then Keanu spoke, his voice low and without judgment. "David, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be straight with me. Are you living in your car?" The question hung in the air. David's face went through several emotions at once. Surprise, shame, fear, and finally resignation. His shoulders sagged like he'd been carrying something heavy for too long and finally had permission to put it down. "How did you know?" he asked quietly. "The bag in the front seat. The pillow. You're always there before everyone else because you're already there. You've been parking in that lot overnight, haven't you?" David nodded slowly. He stared at his coffee cup, unable to meet Keanu's eyes. "I lost my apartment about 6 months ago. My mom got sick, really sick. Cancer. The treatments weren't fully covered by insurance and I had to help with her bills. I used everything I had saved up. Then my landlord raised the rent and I just couldn't make it work anymore." He took a shaky breath before continuing. "I've been living in the car since then. I shower at the gym, do laundry at the laundromat, keep everything I own in that bag and in the trunk. I work every driving job I can get. I do ride shares at night after I drop you off, sometimes until 2 or 3 in the morning. Then I sleep for a few hours and start over." "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Keanu asked. David let out a bitter laugh. "Are you kidding? In this industry? If anyone found out I was homeless, I'd lose every job I have. Nobody wants to hire someone living in their car. They'd think I was unreliable or desperate or a liability. I kept it hidden because I had to. This job, the one with you, it's the best thing I've got going. I couldn't risk losing it." The food arrived, but neither of them touched it right away. Keanu sat back, processing what he'd just heard. Here was a man who showed up every single day, always professional, always reliable, always with a smile, while secretly fighting just to survive. While sleeping in the same car he drove Keanu around in, while pretending everything was fine because admitting the truth could cost him everything. "How's your mom now?" Keanu asked. "She's better, thank God. The treatment worked. She's living with my sister in Arizona now, getting stronger every day. But the bills are still there, you know? Medical debt doesn't just disappear because the person gets better. I'm paying it off slowly, but it's going to take years." Keanu nodded, his expression thoughtful. He wasn't looking at David with pity, which somehow made it easier for David to keep talking. "I'm not looking for sympathy," David added quickly. "I'm managing. I've got a system. I'm figuring it out. I just need to keep working, keep saving, and eventually I'll get back on my feet. I've got a plan." "I'm sure you do," Keanu said. "But you shouldn't have to live like this. Not when you work as hard as you do." David finally looked up. "It is what it is, man. Life happens. You deal with it." They ate in silence for a few minutes. The diner was nearly empty, just a few other late-night diners scattered around. Outside, Los Angeles continued its endless motion, millions of people rushing toward whatever came next, most of them unaware of the struggles happening right beside them. When they finished eating, Keanu paid the bill and left a generous tip. As they walked back to the car, he put a hand on David's shoulder. "We're going to fix this," he said simply. David stopped walking. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're not sleeping in your car anymore. We're going to fix this, Keanu. I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm telling you, we're going to fix this." David felt his throat tighten. He'd been holding everything together for so long, being strong, being practical, being invisible, and now here was someone actually seeing him, actually caring, actually wanting to help. "I don't know what to say," he whispered. "You don't have to say anything tonight," Keanu replied. "Just trust me. Tomorrow morning, everything changes." As they drove back through the dark Los Angeles streets, David gripped the steering wheel and felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Real, genuine hope. He didn't know what Keanu had in mind, couldn't imagine what fixing this actually meant. But for the first time in half a year, he felt like maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. The city lights blurred past the windows and David realized he was crying. Quiet tears he quickly wiped away, grateful that Keanu couldn't see his face from the back seat. "Tomorrow morning," Keanu had said. "Everything changes tomorrow morning." David couldn't wait to see what that meant.